Well, everyone, these are some of my favorite videos to make because these hit home to me like crazy. We are going to be talking about the 2014 MacBook Pro and seeing how the specific MacBook holds up in 2023. Now, the reason why this hits home to me so much for the most part was because this was the very first MacBook that I ever bought. It was the first MacBook that I kind of ever used on an everyday basis, and I bought this MacBook back in 2016, and I used it I think up until either 2017 or 2018. I think it may have been even 2018. And this was an amazing MacBook. I had such a great time with it. The first couple hundred videos probably on this channel were built from this specific, MacBook. And it probably, if I didn't have this MacBook, my whole entire experience of Apple ecosystem kind of stuff wouldn't be there. I don't think I would have delved into Mac OS. I think I would have been more onto the PC Windows side. But definitely with the MacBook like this during that time, it was beautiful. The reason why in 2014 I picked this specific MacBook was because I was doing my research and it looked like a lot of people during that time were complaining about the displays of the MacBook Air. And the 2014 MacBook Pro was already 2 years old during that time. It was cheaper, but also it still maintained a lot of the ports and a lot of the power that the 2012 MacBook Pro had, which a lot of people raved about. I wasn't somebody who needed to take apart my MacBook and repair things and replace things, so I was totally okay with getting a MacBook like this during that time, and I had a great time with it. Since then, Apple has completely shifted their whole entire MacBook lineup. They look much better, the displays are much better, they now have their SD cards back. So if I made this video, which I did make this video 2 or 3 years ago, before the MacBook Pros came out, the newer ones, the M1 Pro models, my opinion on them was, I still like the 2014 MacBook Pro. But nowadays, it really doesn't make a lot of sense to buy a MacBook like this, if I'm being honest. It's been unsupported with software for quite a bit of time. The power just isn't there, but it's still very interesting that a MacBook that came out almost 10 years ago is still this powerful and still this relevant so many years later. So if you want to buy a MacBook, I probably would recommend buying this year. Links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of this MacBook, this specific device looks very, very nice. On the front, you had that Apple logo that glowed up, and I thought it was a very good looking Apple logo. Since then they've removed the Apple logo, or at least the glowing Apple logo on the top, but this one still had it, and I think that was a really, really nice thing they did. I think it'd be really cool if they brought it back, which they probably will never do that, but a boy can dream. Now, on the sides of this MacBook, you are getting, your port selections. Now, this MacBook did come out in a few different selections, so it came out on the cheaper 13-inch model, but it did also come out on that bigger 15-inch model, and I will tell you that 15-inch MacBook of this size is massive. It's bigger than that, it's probably bigger than that 16-inch MacBook that we have nowadays. It's a very, very big machine. So I never got around to actually getting to use that one. I probably bought one and returned it or something, but I never actually used it on an everyday basis. But the 13-inch one was my main size that I used, and the ports were pretty much the same on both of them. So on the right side of the 2014 MacBook Pro, my favorite ports to use, I had a USB 3 port, which was awesome, and an HDMI port that I did use all the time. Then I had an SD card slot. I used that SD card so many times on this MacBook and on my 2015 MacBook Pro that when they removed it, I just couldn't go up to the newer USB-C MacBooks. It was that important to me. And this MacBook had that SD card, which was so important to me at that time. Now on that left side, we had that MagSafe 2 charging port. So that older charging port that Apple removed and brought back. There's so many things that Apple has removed and brought back. It's not even funny. You got 2 Thunderbolt 2 ports, which I actually used quite a bit. You had a USB-A port and a headphone jack. So there were lots of ports here. Some people might be confused what those Thunderbolt 2 ports were for. Basically, if you wanted to connect it to a dock or you wanted to connect it to a monitor, you had that capability. I typically would actually connect my monitors, my HDMI monitors, via Thunderbolt 2, because I always felt like I was going to break my HDMI port from plugging it in on and off all the time. And my Thunderbolt 2 ports, there were 2 of them, so I just ended up using those all the time. It's probably just a weird thing. But on the bottom, you had your screws. You could unscrew this MacBook and take apart some things if you want to. There wasn't a crazy amount of things you could kind of mess around with, but still, it was pretty cool for the most part that you had that type of capability. And then you get to open this MacBook and you get to see exactly what you're working with. Now, on the front, you had this 13.3-inch Retina display for the most part. And this display, let me tell you, it still is a very nice looking display. Back in 2016 when I was using this thing, I was like, wow, this display, it just doesn't get that much better than this thing, does it? And then shortly after, I ended up getting the newer ones with True Tone, and those things look so good, and then they brought promotion. So there's always ways that people find to make these displays look better, and with the 2014 one, this is no exception. This was a very good looking MacBook. And I still think the only issue I kind of have is like maybe there's too much bezel around the display nowadays. But even then, like it's really wasn't that big of a deal. We kind of got used to it. And a lot of the times, if I'm being honest, I was kind of plugging this MacBook into my monitor and just using it via the HDMI monitor. So I wasn't even really looking at the display too much. But if I was in classes, if I was walking around or like a coffee shop or a library or something, or if I was at my house in a different spot, I was definitely looking at this thing via its monitor, and I was looking at this thing via its screen, and it was a very good looking display. Now on the bottom half, you do have that keyboard, you have that trackpad, very normal stuff. The trackpad and keyboard were very nice, but this was the last MacBook to actually have that clicking button trackpad. It was not a vibration motor, so this was the last time Apple has ever done it, and I think rightfully so. Since then they've removed basically the keyboard that we had and like that, then they kind of brought it back. And that trackpad, they did give us that vibration motor one, which I like so much more. And that's kind of how this MacBook kind of looks on the outside. Now, power-wise and software-wise, these are the two main issues that we're kind of running into now. So I say this to the end because this is kind of one of the sadder spots. This MacBook has been kind of unsupported with software for a few years now. So keep that in mind. If you're getting a MacBook like this, it definitely is kind of outdated. So as sad as it is to say, you are not getting the latest and greatest MacBook on this thing anymore. And that's kind of what happens. When you get a MacBook of this caliber, it's definitely going to be showing its age in that software department. It's just what's expected. It's just kind of what happens. So totally understandable. And even with a MacBook like this, that's just kind of what happens. The power of this thing though, these were Intel machines. So this was before Apple made their M1 models now. So with this type of MacBook, I mean, if we're kind of looking at it, if we're being honest, I mean, this thing, during its time did a lot for me. I was able to edit and upload a bunch of videos. I was able to do all of the work that I needed to do. I played some emulators, some games here and there, but for a majority of things that I did, it was basically video editing and thumbnail editing. And this thing did a great job for me. The funniest thing is that this thing did start off with 8 gigabytes of RAM, and it did go up to 16 gigs of RAM, and that is still a lot of memory to have on a MacBook like this. However, I will say the components, like with its i5 chipset, with its 2.6 gigahertz dual core CPU, it's definitely not that fast of a performing device anymore, and that's just kind of what happens as these devices get older. So when I look back at this MacBook and I kind of think about how it holds up nowadays, I mean, it definitely holds up well in the body. It definitely holds up really, really well in the display for the most part. It looks like a very good MacBook. It just doesn't perform like a good MacBook anymore. But I would kind of think that if you kind of think about some MacBooks or some devices that, maybe if you needed to just have some sort of side media device that you just have to manage data on, or that you have to just watch a video on, then this thing is fine, and you could probably even get a lot more out of it. It just so happens that at this day and age, the latest M1 MacBooks and the MacBook Air even just hold up so well that it doesn't really make a lot of sense to buy these types of MacBooks anymore. You can get a really good deal on those M1 models, and it just makes more sense going down that direction than getting one of these older type of Intel machines for the most part. So as sad as it is to say, I don't think this MacBook is worth buying anymore. The 2015 one might be worth buying more so than this thing, to be honest, but this thing means a lot to me. It helped me build a lot of my life, to be honest. And, looking back, I mean, I owe this thing so much, if I'm being real. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.